So, hi and welcome back to the second episode of the Data Enrichment Podcast. In this pod, we're talking about adding data to marketing because data is really what powers digital marketing. And as we're going through a huge technology shift, the data is actually becoming less and less. And that's why the value of adding data into marketing becomes higher and higher. And data is often referred to as the digital gold, but it's only gold if you know what to do with it. And in this pod, we will be talking about explaining some concepts about looking at what's happening, what will be the impact, and of course, also looking at specific things that publishers, advertisers, marketers in general can do when it comes to data. In the last episode, I talked about first and third party data and talking a little bit more about it. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this episode. So first third party data, first third party cookies and so on. What's actually the difference between first and third party data? And here, the biggest difference is that first-party data is data that you control and own yourself. It's data that you can actually store and crunch and do things with without involving someone else. Third-party data is data that you can that's under the control of someone else, right? And that you might be able to get access to. It's not, but not necessarily control. So, and here are a few different levels. I'll get into it in a bit. But if we look at examples of first-party data, we can do kind of the most obvious ones. Name, address, email, phone number to one of your customers. And I would say this is the most valuable data you can have. This is really hard data that you can use to contact a specific customer. And linked to this, like relations data, is of course behavioral data, purchase data, transaction data, showing who the customer is and what is it that they're buying from you. And this is of course something that you can use when you do email marketing, outbound sales, SMS, phone, this type of direct marketing where you know what they've bought from you before, and then you can position relevant additional offerings to same customer. And then you have other first-party data. It can be your website traffic. This is your first-party data, kind of the user journey on the website, first-party data. Referrals from external referrals, which customers came from which marketing channel. This is data you actually can collect and control on your own domains. And this is also data that you can use to optimize your website, personalize, become more relevant for the customers. And when it comes to first-party data, what else is there? Of course, it's your business intelligence data. It can be, seasonal data. What does the season look like, seasonality, and so on. The business intelligence that you know based on your sales and so on. But it's very much data connected to sales, right? And this is where the biggest value, I would say, is from the first-party data. This is your data you control. And then we're talking about third-party data, right? And here I would say that the concept is wider. There's a bigger array of third-party data. But the most obvious ones is I think data that every marketer is using, and it would be search data from Google, audience data, lookalikes from Facebook. This is data that is available in a third-party channel, in a third-party ecosystem, third-party platform, And here, this data you can't really access, and because you can only use it then and there for a few specific purposes. But this is third-party data that you have access to, third-party data that you can use in your marketing. And often what's been done with third-party cookies that we talked about in the last episode is that you can match your own first-party data to this third-party data. This means, matching your website visitors to visitors on Facebook and so on. And this is, of course, really valuable if you want to kind of be able to match in this way. So, but we're talking about third-party data that's under the control of someone else. The use is limited based on what offerings they have and how they limit you, how you can use it. And other third-party data can be, it can be market data, like statistics and so on, available for a specific market. There are commercial marketing data that you can use offline in a high degree, like Mosaic Lifestyles, for instance. This is a market segmentation looking at the full population in a lot of different markets. This is data that's commercial, that you can buy and actually add to your own first-party data. And now we're coming into a different area. So here we're talking about open data, open to use if you pay for it, of course. So you have third-party data, and through different variables like name, address, phone number, email, or different ways of matching, you can actually take this third-party data and add it to your own first-party data. And what you get then is actually more first-party data. You're adding on to your existing data layer and bringing it in under your control so that you can use it in the similar channels as you've done before. But what's cool also with this type of data is that it's also data you can use to target your offline marketing, your digital marketing, to find new prospects. So it's adding an additional layer. And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about data enrichment. You're taking your data, you're enriching it in different ways with more data. And this is really useful, especially when third-party data is getting more scarce. And I would say that also the third-party data that's been available in marketing channels and platforms and so on, they are getting reduced in volume as they are not being able to collect as much data as they were able to before. But you can hear it, right? We're talking about statistical data, we're talking about digital data, lookalikes, market segmentations, and so on. And I think here it's really, really important that we differentiate between the different types of data, because some data are created instantly. You're clicking on a product, you getting information that this user is interested in this product right now. And the thing is, as soon as they made a purchase of another product, this data is obsolete, right? They've already closed their purchase cycle and this is not relevant data anymore. So it has a really low expiration date, meaning that, it can be really relevant for a really short period of time. And this is what I would call fast data. Fast data that's created fast, expires really fast, and without third-party cookies, even though they might not have bought something, the data is lost as the third-party cookie is reset and removed from the browser. So you can't use this information anymore. And this is typically in the digital domain, right? Where you're creating a lot of different events, different digital signals that indicate user behavior, purchase window, and so on, right? And then if we talk about statistical data or market segmentation, then we're moving towards kind of the slow data, that's reliable, but it's not updated that frequently. But it's a very stable data set. And I think that this is where a lot of the power in the combination of first and third party data lies, right? Where you can combine the two, the fast and the slow. And of course, you can also build models on top of this combination, right? Meaning that looking at things like seasonality. All right, what user behavior did we have on the website during this season last year versus different customer segments? Meaning that, yeah, if we get this customer segment on the website next year by this time, we should have those and those offerings, right? So this is, I think, what I'm talking about when I'm talking about data enrichment. Because this will allow you marketers to add more information to your first-party data now that the data volumes in the third-party services is going down. And I think that talking about this first third-party data, it's really essential that we understand the reach ramifications, right? Because if you're working with your first-party data only, you're mostly working with your relational data, meaning that you will be good at serving those you already have a relationship with. But this data is really hard to use to kind of find new customers, right? And if you're going into third-party marketing channels where you're not able to match your customers, you're kind of having to rely on a large extent a black box of information. And I think that if you can create this bridge between the marketing side and the first-party data, your customer data, this is where the bridge and I think the future lies, and why I think it's so relevant with the data enrichment topic in general. Because if you have market data or that's slow or even fast, meaning that now we can see a consumer group having this behavior, and we can see the same behavior on the website. So without the third-party cookie, we can actually start matching them. And if we also can match them demographically and socioeconomically, then the bridge and the accuracy will be higher. But this means that actually advertisers and publishers will have to get better at their first-party data and making sure that they actually can align and match each other. Because if it doesn't, you will be in the guesswork, right? And this is where I think most marketers have been for a very long time, saying that, yeah, you have those customers, we think those websites are more relevant for you, even though you don't have it something really tangible to back it up. But if those websites can say, yeah, we have those consumers with this behavior right now, and say, all right, it seems to match your user base, then we can start building this accuracy as well over time. But hey, we're jumping into data, and if we're looking at advertisers and marketers on the advertising side, they have been relying on simple technologies like the lookalikes because it's worked. And when those technologies are not as accurate anymore, it means actually taking control over your first-party data and making sure that you understand which consumers are more relevant for you, and also actually validating that those consumers that you want to reach are actually those that are driven to your website by your different marketing channels, marketing options, targeting options, and so on. So I think that this is a huge opportunity for publishers and advertisers to really lock arms and come together. But with also the fragmentation of the programmatic ecosystem, this is a true challenge where I think data enrichment that's available on both sides can really act as a bridge for marketing in general. And it's of course a huge task. This is like industry, $500 billion annually, projected to grow to 620 billion in 2026, I think. So the industry is huge. There's a lot of different platforms, but there's no real standard, making this kind of connection without third-party cookies really, really hard. But I think that if advertisers seriously take responsibility of getting to know their customers really, really well, and publishers making sure that they can provide this information in an integrity mindful way, where users opt in to a specific publisher. The publisher works only with their first-party data, enriches it, and makes sure that it stays secure so that internet users can trust you as a publisher. Then you have a really, really good setup to kind of have an integrity mindful, privacy safe, trust also in the digital marketing. Because even though we have this kind of awareness that data is everywhere, a lot of players knows a lot about you, and they're saying it's like, if you're not paying something, then you're the commodity. And I would say that that's true. But on the other hand, what's provided, I think there's a flip side to this coin, and that's if you're not paying anything for something, but you're getting value, well then if you're not paying with cash, maybe you need actually to pay with something else. Because, recommendations, personalization, high relevance, telling you not to drive down this road because it's blocked today and that's the road you usually take, you should probably take this one instead. That's not possible without actually sharing some kind of information. So it's like a two sides of the coin, right? Where you don't want people to know something about you, but if they don't know something about you, they can't serve you. So I think that if we can create an internet where trust in that the data is used responsibly, that the players that know something about you are respectful of your privacy, but then we can also create great user experiences that serves the internet, that serves businesses and internet users. So I think that realizing that we live in a new reality where it's no longer the wild, wild west when it comes to marketing data, that it needs to be trusted, structured, and mindful. If we do this, then I think that we can really, really create something great going forward that's more secure and more trusted and still works in a way that it serves marketing, marketers, advertisers, and publishers. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.